Minnesota's long and arduous journey toward compliance with the federal government's 2005 decree that states enhance the security of state-issued forms of identification has finally come to an end. Joining me in the studio is the author of the bill that got the job done. Senator Eric Pratt, congratulations and welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here again.
Besides the fact that the state was running out of time, why was this the year that Minnesota, one of the last holdout states, finally got this legislation passed?
Well, I think it was because we were running out of time. Some of our citizens were starting to be inconvenienced, and then certainly the signage at the airport warning them that their IDs wouldn't be good in January 2018 started putting the pressure on. So I know I and a lot of my colleagues started getting emails from people who just said, get it done, work together and get it done. But I've talked about an email I got from a mom who couldn't get into a military base to see her son in the infirmary, about a gentleman who had a reservation at the White House and got a letter from the White House saying he couldn't enter with his Minnesota ID as well. He'd have to bring a passport or some other credential. I think that's really what spurred it on, was the grassroots level looking at it and saying, what's the holdup?
Yeah, so the pressure building for Minnesotans who were just starting to run into roadblocks.
Yeah.
I noticed, as you mentioned, at the airport over our spring break, lots of signage alerting people to the necessity of having these new IDs by January of next year. Minnesota will not yet be compliant by January of next year. Does the state need an extension?
Yeah, the governor has already sent the Department of Homeland Security a request for an extension. And if they follow what they've done with other states, I'm confident we'll get it, which means that our deadline will actually be moved to October of 2020. And so we'll start, at least the plan right now is to start issuing those IDs in October of 2018, and we'll have 2 full years of issuance before the deadline.
Can Minnesotans still opt out of getting this type of license if they choose to, if they just prefer to use a passport instead of having this additional form of ID?
They can. You know, one of the arguments against the Real ID was that this was a federal mandate. Well, the state had a choice of whether or not to comply or not, and we're offering citizens a choice of whether they want the Real ID or to keep the standard. If they're concerned about their privacy and some of the hype, they can still get the ID through the same process that they already have. But yes, they can. And because we have a choice and because consumers have a choice, I just don't see it as an infringement on our constitutional rights and our sovereignty as a state.
And you mentioned data privacy, because that's the one area where people had concern, because now there's additional forms of identification required, and some of that, I understand, will be saved in databases. How confident are you that Minnesotans' information will be protected?
Well, I think Minnesotans' information is as safe as it is today. You're right. There's no new documentation that's needed in order to get a driver's license. What we've done is the federal government's narrowed the list of credentials that you can use to prove your identity. So for instance, in the state of Minnesota, we'll accept a tribal ID to get a driver's license, but the federal government won't recognize that for federal purposes. So they'd be able to show a passport, a birth certificate, or some other pre-approved credential. There's no national database that's being kept. There will be some saving of documents, your birth certificate, those types of things, but they're protected by our state's cybersecurity infrastructure.
Now, I know some people don't necessarily have access to a certified birth certificate or something. It costs extra money to get those. Is there anything in place to help people who are having trouble getting those things? I'm
not aware of any problems. That hasn't been raised in any of the discussions that we've had.
Okay.
There are plenty of options for Minnesotans to prove who they are under this list of federal approved documents. It's not 1 or 2, it's like a list of 9, and I just don't recall them off the top of my head.
Well, I will send people to a site where they can find that out. What is it about these new licenses that's going to make them more secure? What are they harder to forge, and how can the state ensure that you are who you say you are?
Well, what really comes down to is what are the credentials I'm using in order to get the ID? The driver's license will look exactly the same as it does today. The only difference will be there'll be a little gold star up in one of the corners that will indicate that it's a real ID and able to be used for federal purposes. Other than that, there's no change. They're not telling us what we need to put on our driver's license other than that emblem. They're not making us change the format. They're not making us add a chip. It looks exactly the same as it does today.
How much does implementing this law cost taxpayers, both in terms of the new equipment required to make these, because don't they have like some kind of chip included in them? So there's that cost, and then there's just also the cost of getting a new license. So let's start with the bigger question. How much does it cost taxpayers to roll this out?
So it's going to cost about a little over $3 million just to do the programming. But that's one-time expense. Again, there's no chip in the real ID.
Oh, there's not?
There's not. There is in the enhanced ID, but not in the real ID.
Okay.
And so it'll look exactly like your license. So it really doesn't cost that much. Most of the cost of getting a new driver's license will be covered when you go in and do an early renewal. We'll charge you a fee, but then you'll be able to extend your expiration date out to 5 years, 6 years, or 7 years, depending on how far out when you get that early renewal. So that's how we're able to keep the expense down, but it's really a one-time programming cost of about $3 million.
And then, but when I go in to renew my license, it's not going to cost me more to have this Real ID than it does for my old.
Real ID costs exactly the same as the current ID, and we put that in statute.
So in terms of what citizens choose to do, it's really up to them. Do you want to be able to fly without having to bring your passport, or do you want to make sure that you have your own data, separate? So it's really just now a person's choice, what they prefer.
Exactly, and that's why we ran it this way. We wanted Minnesotans to have a choice of which type of ID they have. And the other part of the law is we're now going to expand and have enhanced IDs available at every driver's license bureau. Today they're only accessible at about 14 statewide. And so those can be used as a passport card to drive into Canada or Mexico or leave and enter the United States on a ship. And so offering every type of ID that we have at every license bureau statewide will just add to the convenience and help Minnesotans find the ID that best fits their needs.
Senator Pratt, thank you so much for coming today.